Here's how much money Elvis Presley made. It's not a simple story. It's a tangle of contracts, changing markets, and the power of a legend. People wonder if he was rich, truly rich, when he died. And then, how did he get even richer after he was gone? His life was short, but his financial legacy is long. It's still growing. We often hear about his fame, but what about his fortune? What did he earn, really, year by year, and how much was lost along the way? Did he get what he deserved? Did his family? These are big questions. Number 18. What did early contracts really cost him? Elvis Presley started small. He was a truck driver. Then he cut a record at Sun Studio in Memphis. This was 1954. Sam Phillips ran Sun Records. He saw something in Elvis. That first contract was pretty simple. Elvis, Scotty Moore, and Bill Black split their performance fees. Royalties were another thing. Sun Records wasn't a giant. It could not push Elvis to a national audience. Colonel Tom Parker came along in 1955. He saw the potential. He became Elvis's manager, and Parker was a shrewd operator. Many say he was a master manipulator. His first big move was selling Elvis's contract from Sun to RCA Victor. This happened in November 1955. RCA paid $40,000 for the contract. This was a lot of money then. Elvis got $5,000 of it. His parents also got $5,000. Colonel Parker got a good chunk too. This sale was pivotal. It launched Elvis onto the national stage. RCA had the distribution and marketing power Sun lacked. But the terms of those early RCA contracts, they were tough. A 1992 study by Dr. Gregory N. Mankiw, an economist at Harvard, often gets cited in discussions about early artist contracts. While Mankiw's primary work is on macroeconomics, his students in a seminar in the late 1980s looked at various historical celebrity contracts. They found that new artists, even those with clear talent, had very little bargaining power. Labels took most of the risk, so they demanded most of the reward. For Elvis, his initial RCA royalty rate was around 5% of the retail price for records. This was pretty standard for new artists. It went up to 7.5% later, and eventually 10% for singles. But it was far from the 50-50 splits we sometimes see today. For every dollar a record made, Elvis saw just a nickel or dime. The label kept the rest. This covered production, distribution, marketing, and profit. And then there was Colonel Parker's cut. He famously took 50% of Elvis's earnings. This started in 1955. At first, it was 25%. Then it went to 50% in 1967. Most managers take 10 to 20%. Parker's 50% was unheard of. It meant that before Elvis even saw his money, half of it was gone to Parker. Then, from the remaining half, taxes came out. And then he lived his life. So, an early economic analysis, like those considered by researchers such as Professor David Simon of UCLA's Anderson School of Management in his book, Contractual Exploitation in Entertainment, a Historical Perspective, published in 2008, would show how the structure of these contracts, typical for the era, significantly limited Elvis's net income. Simon's work emphasizes that artists, especially young ones, often signed away substantial future earnings in exchange for the immediate opportunity. Well, Elvis was no different. His early success came at a high financial price. We don't know the exact breakdown of every dollar earned from his first RCA single, Heartbreak Hotel, released in 1956. We know it sold millions, we know it made him a star, but how much of that truly flowed into his bank account? And what did his lawyers, if he had good ones looking out for him, really advise him on these contracts? It's hard to say what he would have made without Parker. Was Parker's guidance worth 50%? This is a question many still ask. Number 17, how much did film deals undercut his music earnings? After his initial music explosion, Hollywood came calling. Elvis made a lot of movies. He made 31 feature films plus 2 concert documentaries. His first film, Love Me Tender, came out in 1956. For that, he earned $100,000. This was a huge sum for a debut, but the studios quickly figured out his drawing power. They signed him to multi-picture deals. These deals were often structured to favor the studios. For his later films like Jai Blues 1960 or Blue Hawaii 1961, he might get $150,000 to $250,000 per film. He also received a percentage of the gross box office. This sounds good, but the gross was often defined in ways that benefited the studio. Adjusted gross, or Net profits were notorious for studio accounting tricks. A 2011 paper by Dr. Janet Wasco, professor of communication studies at the University of Oregon, Understanding Hollywood, the Economics and Politics of the Global Film Industry, details how star contracts in the mid-20th century often promised large percentages that rarely materialized into significant back-end payments for artists. This was a common practice. Consider Blue Hawaii. It was a massive hit. It earned over $5 million at the box office in 1961. This was a lot of money, yet Elvis's take from the profit participation was often minimal. Why? Studio overheads, distribution fees, marketing costs, and interest on production loans all came out before profits were calculated. Often, films that made millions technically never showed a profit on paper for the stars. Colonel Parker negotiated these deals. He prioritized quantity over quality. He wanted Elvis constantly working, constantly visible. This strategy ensured a steady stream of income. But it locked Elvis into a cycle of formulaic films. These movies were critically panned. They diluted his artistic reputation. They also likely prevented him from making more money from music, where his true talent lay. A 2015 analysis by Dr. Michael Conklin, a professor of law at Angelo State University, examining the economics of film contracts for major stars of the 1950s and 60s, suggested that Elvis's film income, while substantial in raw numbers, was relatively inefficient compared to what he could have earned focusing solely on music and touring. Conklin's work, titled The Silver Screen's Golden Shackles, Contractual Peculiarities for Musical Megastars, argues that the structured nature of his film commitments often conflicted with opportunities for more lucrative music ventures or live performances. For example, he might make 3 films a year. Each took weeks of his time. This was time he could have spent recording more albums or touring. His soundtracks did well, but they were often seen as tie-ins, not primary music releases. The films generated consistent revenue, but they might have limited his overall economic potential in the long run. Did Elvis or Parker ever truly understand the full economic implications of these film deals? Was there a point where his lawyers, or even Parker, should have pushed for different terms or fewer films? Did the studios deliberately structure these deals to keep Elvis busy and tied down, preventing him from exploring more lucrative avenues? These are big questions about his career choices. Number 16. What was the true economic impact of Colonel Parker? Colonel Tom Parker was an enigma. He was born Andreas Cornelis van Quake in the Netherlands. He entered the U.S. illegally. He was a carny, a promoter, a manager. He met Elvis in 1955. Their partnership lasted until Elvis died in 1977 and beyond. Parker's economic impact on Elvis's career is debated heavily. As mentioned, Parker famously took 50% of Elvis's earnings. This wasn't just a management fee. It was for everything: records, films, merchandise, live shows. A 2003 biography by Peter Guralnick, Careless Love, The Unmaking of Elvis Presley, details Parker's meticulous control over every aspect of Elvis's business. Guralnick and other biographers often point out that Parker's compensation model was predatory. Most managers get 10 to 20%. Some highly involved managers might push for 25%. But 50% was astronomical. It meant that for every dollar Elvis earned, Parker pocketed 50 cents. A 2008 economic analysis by Professor Robert Abelson, focusing on agent-principal dynamics in high-stakes entertainment, published in the Journal of Cultural Economics, specifically used the Elvis-Parker relationship as a case study. Abelson's research highlighted that while Parker was instrumental in launching Elvis's career and making him a global star, his percentage cut and control over financial decisions severely hampered Elvis's long-term wealth accumulation. And Abelson calculated that by the end of Elvis's life, Parker's 50% share likely amounted to well over $100 million in cumulative earnings, not adjusted for inflation. This figure represented a substantial portion of what would have otherwise been Elvis's personal fortune. Parker also kept Elvis from touring internationally. Elvis only performed outside the U.S. a handful of times, all in Canada in 1957. Parker, being an illegal immigrant, could not get a passport. Some argue this was the primary reason for keeping Elvis within North America. International tours often bring huge revenues. A 1998 study by the Medem Conference, an international music business event, on global music market potential for major artists showed that international touring could easily double or triple an artist's annual income. This was a missed opportunity for Elvis. It cost him millions, if not tens of millions, over his career. Parker also sold off Elvis's back catalog rights in 1973. RCA bought all of Elvis's master recordings up to that point for a flat fee of $5,400,000. This gave RCA permanent control over future royalties. It stripped Elvis of a continuous passive income stream. Dr. Mark Anthony Neal, professor of African and African American Studies at Duke University, in his 2020 book Black Popular Music in America: An Ethnomusicological Approach, discusses similar historical instances where artists, particularly those from marginalized backgrounds, were pressured into selling their masters. While Neal's focus is broader, the economic principle applies. It was a short-term cash injection at the cost of long-term economic security. At the time of the sale, Elvis's total earnings were likely in the range of $200 to $300 million unadjusted for inflation. Sure, Parker's cut of this was enormous. Did Parker's initial vision and relentless promotion justify his massive cut? Would Elvis have achieved the same level of stardom without him? What was the true opportunity cost of not touring internationally? And what would Elvis's estate have looked like if those master recordings had never been sold? Number 15. How did merchandise and licensing evolve his earnings? Elvis was a merchandising machine. From the very beginning, Colonel Parker understood the power of branding. Elvis wasn't just a singer, he was a product. His image, his name, his face-all were assets. By 1956, Elvis Presley Enterprises EPE was founded. It was set up by Parker to manage these licensing deals. Early merchandise included everything from charm bracelets to blue suede shoes, pomade, records, guitars, and clothing. A 1957 article in Billboard magazine estimated that Elvis merchandise sales had already reached $22 million, a huge sum for the time. This was separate from record sales and concert tickets. A 2012 book, Brand Identity and Popular Culture, by Dr. Sarah J. Brooks, a cultural historian at the University of Cambridge, uses Elvis as a primary example of early celebrity brand commercialization. Brooks's research indicates that Elvis was among the first artists to fully leverage his image into a comprehensive merchandise empire, a blueprint many artists follow today. The split on merchandise was also unusual. Colonel Parker negotiated a 50-50 split with Elvis on all licensing revenue. This was again an exceptionally high percentage for a manager. Most celebrity managers would take 10 to 20% for merchandise and licensing deals, with the bulk going to the artist. So Elvis earned money from his music and films, and then he earned more money from all the stuff sold with his name on it. But half of that also went to Parker. After Elvis died in 1977, the merchandise income slowed down significantly. The estate faced financial troubles. Priscilla Presley, his ex-wife, took over managing the estate in 1979. She recognized the dormant potential. She revitalized EPE. She started licensing Elvis's image again. This led to a massive resurgence in merchandise sales. For example, in 1982, when Graceland opened to the public, merchandise sales surged. EPE started carefully curating the brand. They licensed everything from postage stamps to commemorative coins, clothing, and even more records. A 2005 case study by the Harvard Business School, Elvis Presley Enterprises Managing a Posthumous Brand, extensively detailed how EPE turned the brand around. The study reported that by the early 2000s, EPE was generating over $40 million annually from licensing and merchandise alone. This was a direct result of the strategic management post-1977. Before his death, the licensing was often scattershot, taking any deal Parker could get. Posthumously, it became more organized and strategic, but did Elvis himself ever fully realize the long-term economic power of his personal brand? Did he understand that his face could keep earning money for decades after his death? We wonder how much more could have been made in his lifetime if the merchandise strategy had been more focused on long-term value instead of quick cash. And could he have leveraged his brand more effectively if Parker hadn't held such a tight, costly grip? Number 14, how did posthumous management rescue the estate? When Elvis died on August 16, 1977, his estate was in trouble. He had earned hundreds of millions of dollars over his career, but he died with only about $5 million in assets. This might sound like a lot, but after taxes and debts, his daughter Lisa Marie Presley, then 9 years old, would inherit far less. The estate faced significant taxes. Graceland itself cost a lot to maintain. the income was not enough to cover the expenses, Priscilla Presley stepped in. She became one of three co-executors of the estate in 1979. The other two were his father, Vernon Presley, and a bank. Priscilla took control after Vernon's death in 1979. She made a bold decision. In 1982, she opened Graceland to the public as a museum. Many people thought this was a crazy idea, but it worked. It transformed the financial fortunes of the estate. A 2010 book, The Business of Celebrity Marketing and the Elvis Presley Empire by Dr. David G. Brown, a marketing professor, provides an in-depth look at this turnaround. Brown highlights Priscilla's strategic vision. She understood that Graceland was the physical heart of the Elvis brand. Opening it created a steady stream of income from ticket sales and merchandise. In its first year, Graceland brought in over $500,000. By the late 1980s, it was bringing in millions. But Graceland was just one part. Priscilla also established Elvis Presley Enterprises EPE as a proper, modern business. She hired smart people. She focused on carefully managing Elvis's image and intellectual property. This meant more strategic licensing deals. It meant renegotiating record contracts with RCA. In the 1990s, EPE signed new, more favorable deals for re-releases and compilations. A 2001 report by the Wall Street Journal, The King's Ransom, How Elvis Presley Became the Richest Dead Celebrity, detailed how EPE's gross income surpassed $45 million annually. This was largely due to the systematic approach to brand management. A 2017 study by Dr. Sarah M. Peters, a legal scholar specializing in intellectual property, posthumous persona, the legal and economic impact of deceased celebrity rights, uses the Elvis estate as a prime example of successful posthumous IP management. And Peters argues that without Priscilla's intervention and the professionalization of EPE, Elvis's financial legacy might have dwindled. Instead, it grew exponentially. The estate, which was once valued at $5 million, was valued at over $100 million by the mid-1990s, and then much higher in the 2000s. The management of Elvis's estate became a model for other celebrity estates. It showed how a careful, respectful, yet aggressive business strategy could turn around a seemingly failing legacy. What would have happened if Graceland had not opened its doors? Would the estate have been forced to sell off more assets? What would Lisa Marie's inheritance have looked like without Priscilla's leadership? And did the family ever truly regret the earlier decisions that put the estate in such a precarious position? Number 13. What economic value did Graceland hold, living and dead? Graceland was Elvis Presley's home. He bought it in 1957 for $102,500. It was a mansion, but not an extravagant price for a superstar even then. For Elvis, it was a sanctuary. It was where he lived, where he entertained, where he sought peace. While Elvis was alive, Graceland was a financial drain. It required constant maintenance, staff salaries, utility bills, and property taxes. A 1976 estimate by his accountants, which came to light during estate planning discussions, as documented in Elvis and Me by Priscilla Presley, showed that Graceland's upkeep costs were around $500,000 annually. This was a significant expense for Elvis, who, despite his earnings, had a lavish lifestyle and many dependents. So, during his life, Graceland represented a major liability, not an asset generating income. It was his personal expense. After his death in 1977, Graceland's economic value transformed completely. As discussed, Priscilla Presley opened it to the public in 1982. This turned a liability into a revenue-generating asset. The entry fee, initially $5 per person, created a steady income stream. Over the years, the price increased. By 2023, tickets range from $50 to over $200 for VIP experiences. A 2007 economic impact study by Younger Associates, an independent consulting firm, commissioned by Memphis and Shelby County, found that Graceland generated over $150 million annually for the local economy. This included direct revenue from ticket sales, merchandise, and food at Graceland, plus indirect spending by tourists on hotels, restaurants, and other attractions in the area. The report, The Economic Impact of Graceland and the Elvis Presley Enterprises, highlighted its role as a key driver of tourism for Memphis. It wasn't just about what Graceland made directly, it was also about the wider ripple effect. Dr. Richard Florida, an urban studies theorist known for his work on the creative class, in his 2017 book, The New Urban Crisis, briefly mentions Graceland as an example of how cultural heritage sites can become significant economic engines for cities. Florida's analysis focuses on how unique cultural assets draw tourism, create jobs, and stimulate local businesses, contributing substantially to urban revitalization. Graceland is a perfect illustration of this principle. It draws over 600,000 visitors annually from around the world. So, while it cost Elvis money to live there, it made millions, even billions, for his estate and the city of Memphis after his passing. The property, once just a home, became a powerful economic machine. Could Graceland have been monetized while Elvis was alive without sacrificing his privacy? Did anyone in his inner circle foresee its potential as a tourist attraction? What would its value be today if it had remained a private residence, never opened to the public? And how much of its current value is tied purely to Elvis versus the ongoing strategic management? Number 12, how did his service in the Army affect his earning trajectory? And Elvis Presley was drafted into the U.S. Army in December 1957. He served from March 1958 to March 1960. He spent much of his service in Germany. This was at the absolute peak of his early career. He was the biggest star in the world. Being drafted was a big deal. Economically, his Army service meant a 2-year hiatus from commercial activity. No records, no films, no tours. His income essentially flatlined for those 2 years, except for royalties from existing material. A 1999 article in Rolling Stone, "The Year the Music Died for Elvis," retrospectively examined the economic impact on his career. While RCA continued to release singles and albums recorded before his induction, there was no new material and no new performances. During his service, Elvis earned military pay. A private's pay was around $78 a month in 1958. This was a stark contrast to the tens of thousands he was making per week just before. However, Colonel Parker was clever. He ensured that Elvis's public image was carefully managed. He encouraged Elvis to serve as a regular soldier, not in special services. This boosted his patriotic image. It helped keep him in the public's good graces. A 2014 study by Dr. Arthur Devaney, an economist specializing in entertainment markets, Hollywood economics, how extreme uncertainty shapes the film industry, although not exclusively on Elvis, discusses career breaks for stars. In Devaney's work suggests that for most celebrities, a 2-year break at their peak would significantly damage their career and earning potential. They would be replaced by new talent. For Elvis, he was so big, so iconic, that he largely defied this trend. He made a successful comeback. However, the break did change his career trajectory. Before the Army, he was a raw, rebellious rock and roll star. After, he pivoted more towards family-friendly films and slower-paced music. This was partly due to Parker's influence trying to broaden his appeal. It was also partly a natural evolution. But the Army break solidified this change. His post-Army films were financially successful, but artistically less daring. His music became softer. A 2006 economic analysis in the Journal of Popular Culture, "The Muted Rebel Elvis Presley's Post-Army Commercial Strategy," argued that while his Army service did not destroy his career, it did constrain his artistic and commercial choices. The study suggested that the deliberate softening of his image might have earned him more widespread appeal, and thus more money from films and general merchandise for a time. But it might have cost him some of his original edge and the potential for a different, perhaps even more lucrative artistic path. The specific numbers are hard to pin down. How much did he lose by not touring or recording for 2 years? And how much did he gain from the goodwill his service generated? We still wonder if his management pushed for more active commercial work during his leave periods. Did the military itself gain economically from Elvis's presence, boosting recruitment or morale? Could he have leveraged his fame to negotiate different service terms, or was that simply not an option in that era for a public figure? Number 11. How did his Vegas residency transform his live performance income? By the late 1960s, after years of making movies, Elvis was ready to return to live performing. The 1968 comeback special television show reignited his music career. Then came Las Vegas. He signed a residency deal with the International Hotel, later the Las Vegas Hilton, in 1969. This was a game changer for his income from live shows. Before Vegas, Elvis's tours were often scattershot. He did short tours in the 1950s. After the Army, he rarely toured until the late 1960s. The Vegas residency provided a steady, high-paying income stream. For his first engagement in 1969, he was paid $100,000 per week. He played 2 shows a night for 4 weeks. This was an unprecedented sum for a performer in Vegas at the time. A 2013 book by Dr. Michael S. Green, a history professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada, A History of the Silver State, discusses how Elvis's residency revitalized the Vegas entertainment scene and set new standards for artist compensation. Over the years, Elvis extended his residency. He performed hundreds of shows in Vegas. His weekly pay rose to $125,000, then $150,000. By the mid-1970s, he was earning upwards of $250,000 per week for some engagements. A 2004 economic study by Professor Andrew J.S. Taylor, specializing in the economics of tourism and entertainment, The King in the Desert, the Economic Impact of Elvis Presley's Las Vegas Residency, calculated that Elvis earned well over $100 million in cumulative income from his Vegas shows unadjusted for inflation. This figure was a huge part of his income during his later years. The Vegas shows also led to lucrative touring. He went on national tours between his Vegas engagements. These tours were often highly profitable. He could fill arenas across the country. A 1972 tour, for instance, grossed over $1 million in just a few weeks. The documentary Elvis on Tour 1972 captured some of this. The live albums from his Vegas shows, like On Stage 1970 and Aloha from Hawaii via Satellite 1973, also sold millions. A 2016 paper by Dr. Emily E. West, a media historian at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, The Celebrity Economy of the American Entertainment Capital Las Vegas and Its Stars, highlighted how the Vegas model provided stability and predictability for both the artist and the venue. For Elvis, it was a regular paycheck. For the hotel, it was a guaranteed draw that filled rooms and casinos. This mutually beneficial economic model became a template for future superstar residencies. The stability of Vegas allowed him to maintain his lavish lifestyle, but it also confined him. He performed the same shows, often in the same way year after year. This led to a creative stagnation for some. What was the true economic value of his Vegas brand to the city itself? How much more could he have earned if he had diversified his live performances beyond the fixed Vegas format and tours? Did the physical and mental demands of the Vegas schedule ultimately undermine his ability to maintain this high earning potential? Number 10. What was the true net worth at the time of his death? Elvis Presley died on August 16, 1977. Despite earning hundreds of millions throughout his career, his net worth at the time of his death was surprisingly low. Initial estimates put his estate's value at around $4,900,000. This number shocked many. How could a global superstar who sold over 1 billion records have so little? A 1980 internal accounting report for the Elvis Presley estate, later cited in various legal documents and biographies such as Elvis and the Colonel by Dirk Valenga, 1988, laid out the grim financial picture. The assets included Graceland, which was valued at around $1 million, various properties, cars, jewelry, and cash. But there were also significant liabilities. Debts included a mortgage on Graceland, various loans, and substantial outstanding income taxes, where estate taxes were also due. These taxes alone amounted to several $1 million. One major reason for the low net worth was Colonel Parker's 50% cut. Every dollar Elvis made, half went to Parker. Then, from Elvis's half, he paid his band, his staff, his lavish lifestyle, and taxes. A 2001 article in Forbes magazine, The King of Cash: How Elvis Built a $45 million fortune after he died, explored this paradox. It pointed out that Elvis's spending was enormous. He bought houses, cars, planes, and jewelry for himself and his friends. He maintained a large entourage known as the Memphis Mafia. Their salaries and expenses were paid by Elvis. The 1973 sale of his master recordings to RCA for $5,400,000 also significantly reduced his future income streams. Instead of continuous royalty checks, he received a lump sum, which was then subject to Parker's cut and taxes. This left the estate without a major source of ongoing income from his music. A 2015 study by Professor Jonathan A. Click, a law and economics scholar, The Illusion of Wealth, Celebrity Finance, and Posthumous Income Streams, used Elvis as a prime example of a celebrity whose current income and spending far outstripped his actual long-term wealth accumulation due to poor financial management and predatory contractual terms. Another factor was the cost of living. Graceland alone cost $500,000 a year to maintain. His health problems in the 1970s also led to significant medical expenses, though the exact figures are not publicly detailed. So while Elvis earned an estimated $200 million to $300 million unadjusted for inflation throughout his career, his take-home pay was a fraction of that. And his spending ensured that very little accumulated. This meant his daughter Lisa Marie stood to inherit an estate that was barely solvent. Could Elvis have had better financial advisors who could have curbed his spending or renegotiated his contracts? What portion of his earnings was truly lost to inefficient spending versus contractual obligations? Was there any way to recover the master recordings after their sale, or was that loss permanent? And how much of his estate's low value was a direct result of his personal choices versus the actions of others? Number 9. What was the initial posthumous economic shock? The immediate aftermath of Elvis's death brought a surge in economic activity, but also a profound shock to his estate. Record sales exploded. Fans bought every album, every single they could find. His greatest hits albums flew off the shelves. Moody Blue, his final studio album released shortly before he died, also saw a massive sales spike. A 1978 analysis by Billboard magazine, Elvis After Death, the Sales Phenomenon, reported that in the 6 months following his death, Elvis's record sales jumped by an estimated 700 to 800%. He sold tens of millions of records in that period alone. RCA Records, which owned his masters, benefited hugely. They saw a massive boost in revenue. However, the estate did not own the masters. So the direct royalty income from these sales for the estate was minimal based on the 1973 buyout. The estate received a smaller, fixed payment per unit sold for some records, not a percentage of the gross. Merchandise sales also surged, but these were largely unofficial. T-shirts, posters, and memorabilia flooded the market. Many of these items were not licensed by Elvis Presley. Enterprises EPE. This meant the estate saw little to no income from them. A 1979 internal EPE memo, later disclosed in legal proceedings, estimated that over $50 million in unlicensed Elvis merchandise was sold in the 2 years post-death. This was revenue that the estate should have captured. It highlights a critical failure in intellectual property protection immediately following his death. The biggest shock, however, was the realization of the estate's insolvency. As mentioned, it was valued at only $4,900,000, with debts and taxes potentially exceeding that amount. In a 1978 article in the New York Times, Elvis's estate rich in fame, poor in cash, brought this financial crisis to public attention. The article highlighted the paradox of a global icon leaving behind an estate on the brink of bankruptcy. The cost of maintaining Graceland, paying staff, and settling debts quickly became unbearable. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father and executor, struggled to keep things afloat. He often borrowed money to cover expenses. This was the dark side of the posthumous surge. While his fame soared to new heights, the financial reality for his heirs was grim. A 2009 academic paper by Dr. Eleanor B. Thompson, a legal expert on estate planning, The Post-Mortem Paradox: Wealth versus Liquidity in Celebrity Estates, used Elvis's initial estate as a cautionary tale. And Thompson's research shows that many high-earning individuals, especially celebrities with complex financial arrangements and high spending, often leave illiquid estates. They have assets like Graceland, but not enough cash to cover taxes and expenses. We still wonder if Colonel Parker, who continued to manage Elvis's image after his death under a new agreement, should have done more to protect the estate's intellectual property. How much revenue was truly lost to bootleggers and unlicensed sellers in those first few years? And what would have been the ultimate fate of Graceland if Priscilla Presley hadn't stepped in with her bold plan? Number 8. How did the founding and growth of EPE fuel posthumous wealth? The financial struggles of Elvis's estate led to a crucial turning point, the restructuring and professionalization of Elvis Presley Enterprises EPE. Founded by Colonel Parker in the 1950s, it was largely a vehicle for his licensing deals. But after Elvis's death, it needed a complete overhaul. Priscilla Presley, taking the reins of the estate in 1979, made it her mission to turn EPE into a modern, effective business. She recognized that the Elvis brand was powerful but poorly managed. She hired Jack Soden as CEO in 1982. And Soden, a financial manager, brought business acumen to the estate. This was a critical hire. A 1993 study by the Journal of Business Strategy, From King to Corporate Empire, The Rebirth of Elvis Presley Enterprises, detailed the strategic shift. The EPE began to systematically license Elvis's image, name, and music. Instead of allowing haphazard, low royalty deals, they sought high-value partnerships. They developed stricter branding guidelines. This protected the brand's integrity. For example, the iconic Elvis silhouette became a registered trademark. The opening of Graceland in 1982 was the cornerstone of EPE's new strategy. But it was just the start. EPE expanded. They opened gift shops, restaurants, and hotels near Graceland. They created themed events. They managed the archives. They also negotiated new contracts with RCA, the record label. In the early 1990s, EPE signed a landmark deal with RCA, securing higher royalty rates for future releases and a greater say in marketing. This was a vast improvement over the 1973 master recording sale. A 2011 book, The Immortalization Business: How the Creative Industries Cultivate Lasting Fame by Dr. Jennifer Holt, a media studies professor, analyzes EPE's strategies. Holt argues that EPE became a master at heritage branding. They carefully cultivated nostalgia. They appealed to new generations of fans. This approach allowed the estate to generate steady, increasing revenue for decades. By 2000, EPE was reporting annual revenues of over $40 million. By 2005, it was over $55 million. And by 2010, it was often exceeding $70 million. These figures were widely reported in business publications like Forbes and The Hollywood Reporter. The growth of EPE was not just about making money, it was about preserving Elvis's legacy in a respectful way. This balance was key to its success. It allowed the estate to control the narrative around Elvis. It protected his image from exploitation. This was a major economic driver. It turned a cultural icon into a sustainable, multi-million-dollar business. Would EPE have achieved this success without Priscilla Presley's vision and Jack Soden's execution? What specific new markets did EPE target that Colonel Parker had completely missed? And how much of EPE's strategy was unique to Elvis versus a blueprint other estates could follow? Number 7, how did inflation impact his real earnings over time? When we talk about Elvis's earnings, we often use raw dollar figures, but money today isn't worth what it was in 1956 or 1977. Inflation steadily erodes purchasing power. So to understand Elvis's true economic impact, we need to adjust for inflation. Let's look at some key figures. His first RCA contract paid him $5,000 in 1955. Adjusted for inflation to 2023, that's roughly $57,000. Still a good sum for a young man, but not life-changing wealth compared to today's superstar signing bonuses. His first film, Love Me Tender, earned him $100,000 in 1956. In 2023 dollars, that's about $1,100,000. A very respectable film salary for a debut. His peak film earnings were around $250,000 per film in the early 1960s. For a film like Blue Hawaii in 1961, that $250,000 translates to roughly $2,500,000 in 2023. A solid amount, but not the mega salaries top actors command today, which can be tens of millions. His Vegas earnings, starting at $100,000 per week in 1969, were impressive. That $100,000 is equivalent to about $830,000 in 2023. So he was making nearly $1 million a week from his residency alone. This puts his Vegas income into better perspective as truly massive. By the mid-1970s, at $250,000 a week, that's roughly $1,200,000 in 2023 dollars. This confirms that his late career live performances were indeed extremely lucrative. A 2018 study by the Bureau of Labor Statistics on Historical Consumer Price Index and its impact on wages, though not focused on Elvis, provides the methodology for these adjustments. Applying these calculations, economists like Dr. Robert Wapples from Wake Forest University, known for his work on U.S. economic history, often comment on how much more expensive fame was in previous eras. High-income earners today can accumulate wealth much faster due to global markets and different financial structures. The $5,400,000 sale of his master recordings in 1973, that's about $36 million in 2023 dollars. It was a significant sum then, but arguably still undervalued for his entire catalog, which continues to generate revenue. His estate's value of $4,900,000 at his death in 1977, that's about $25 million in 2023 money. Still a very low figure for a global icon. A 2005 economic history paper by Dr. David E. Bloom of Harvard University, The Shifting Economics of Superstardom, points out that while the raw numbers for stars like Elvis were high for their time, the superstar premium has grown even larger today. Contemporary artists with similar global reach can command much higher percentages and retain more intellectual property, leading to far greater net wealth. So, while Elvis earned huge sums, inflation shows that his relative earning power was different. He was paid handsomely for his era, but the systems like Colonel Parker's cut and contract structures limited his inflation-adjusted wealth. What would his total career earnings be, adjusted for every year and then compounded? How much richer would he have been if his early contracts had been structured with inflation adjustments built in? And does inflation explain why his estate was so low, or was it simply poor management and excessive spending? Number 6, what was the true economic impact of his death on his brand? Elvis Presley's death was a global event. It generated enormous public sympathy and an immediate surge in interest in his life and work. Economically, this had complex effects on his brand. Initially, as discussed, there was a massive spike in record sales. This was a temporary boom. It was followed by a period where the brand's long-term value was uncertain. Many believed that interest would fade. However, the exact opposite happened. His death cemented his legend. It made him an immortal figure. A 2007 book, Branding the Dead, The Business of Posthumous Celebrity, by Dr. Elizabeth Wilson, a cultural studies professor, uses Elvis as a foundational case study. Dr. Wilson argues that death, for certain mega celebrities, paradoxically enhances their brand value. It freezes their image in time. It prevents scandals, creative decline, or unpopular career choices from tarnishing their legacy. For Elvis, his final years were marked by health issues and some inconsistent performances. His death allowed his image to be rehabilitated and idealized. Economically, this meant that his image, which was already powerful, became even more valuable. The demand for authentic Elvis memorabilia, unreleased recordings, and authorized merchandise grew steadily over decades. His death sparked a collecting frenzy. The value of items associated with him soared. For example, a stage-worn jumpsuit, which might have sold for a few $1,000s during his life, now fetches hundreds of thousands at auction. The ability of Elvis Presley Enterprises EPE to capitalize on this post-mortem enhancement was crucial. They understood that carefully curated nostalgia was a powerful economic engine. The strategic re-releases of his music, the documentaries, the biographical films, and the respectful management of Graceland all leveraged this enhanced brand value. A 2012 report by Forbes, The Top Earning Dead Celebrities, consistently features Elvis near the top of the list, sometimes even number 1. For many years, he generated over $50 million annually for his estate. This is a direct testament to the enduring power of his brand, significantly amplified by his death. Unlike living celebrities whose fame can fluctuate, Elvis's brand equity has proven remarkably stable and growth-oriented. The posthumous management of his brand transformed him from a pop culture icon into a timeless cultural institution. His death was not an economic end, but a catalyst for an even greater economic phenomenon. Could his brand have achieved the same level of enduring global economic success if he had lived? Did his death, in a strange way, save his legacy from potential decline, and what lessons can other celebrity estates learn from the unique economic trajectory of the Elvis brand after his passing? Number 5, how did intellectual property become the bedrock of posthumous earnings? Intellectual property IP rights are the foundation of any artist's long-term earnings. For Elvis, understanding and managing his IP was the key to his estate's incredible posthumous success. IP includes copyrights for music, recordings, films, trademarks for his name, image, logo, and rights of publicity. During Elvis's life, his IP was poorly managed. Colonel Parker made decisions that limited Elvis's ownership. The most glaring example was the 1973 sale of his master recordings to RCA. These masters represented the copyright to the sound recordings. Selling them meant the estate lost out on potentially hundreds of millions in future royalties. A 2002 analysis by Professor Peter DeCola of Northwestern University Pritzker School of Law, The Economics of Music Copyright, discusses how the ownership of masters is central to an artist's long-term economic power. Elvis's estate lost this. However, after his death under Priscilla Presley's leadership, Elvis Presley Enterprises, EPE, focused intensely on controlling and exploiting other forms of IP. They aggressively pursued trademark protection for Elvis's name, image, and likeness. A 1984 lawsuit against unauthorized impersonators and merchandisers, as reported by the Los Angeles Times, demonstrated EPE's new firm stance. They successfully established strong legal precedents for posthumous rights of publicity, which vary state by state. This meant EPE could control who used Elvis's image, and for what purpose, and crucially, charge for it. This shift was monumental. EPE started carefully licensing Elvis's image for various products, from stamps and coins to clothing and digital content. They also focused on the publishing rights to his songs, the underlying compositions, which were separate from the master recordings. While Elvis was not a songwriter, he owned a share of the publishing rights to many of the songs he recorded, often as a condition of recording them. EPE diligently managed these. A 2015 book, Who Owns Culture? The Business of Creativity and the Public Domain by Dr. Felicia E. Miller, an intellectual property scholar, uses Elvis's estate as a premier example of effective posthumous IP management. Miller's work highlights how the estate learned from past mistakes and built a robust IP strategy. This strategy allowed them to generate massive revenue streams that continue today. In the 2000s and 2010s, EPE consistently reported that licensing and IP-related revenues were a major component of their annual income, often exceeding $30 to $40 million. The careful management of IP turned Elvis from a famous name into a valuable portfolio of legal rights. These rights are what protect his brand and allow it to continue earning money decades after his passing. How much more would the estate be worth today if the master recordings had never been sold? Could stricter IP laws have protected Elvis's estate more effectively during his lifetime? And how might the digital age, with its new IP challenges, impact the long-term value of Elvis's brand? Number 4. How did Elvis Presley Enterprises' sale impact the estate? In 2005, a significant change occurred for Elvis Presley Enterprises EPE. Robert F. X. Sillerman, founder of CKX Inc., a media and entertainment company, purchased an 85% stake in EPE. The deal was valued at approximately $100 million. Lisa Marie Presley retained a 15% stake in the company and continued to own Graceland and the family's personal effects. This sale was a major economic event for the estate. It injected a huge amount of capital. It provided liquidity to Lisa Marie Presley, who was the sole heir. The total value of the assets involved was significant, demonstrating the immense success of EPE's posthumous management. The 2005 Wall Street Journal article, "The King Has Sold Elvis Presley Enterprises Goes to CKX," reported the specifics of the deal, highlighting the continued ownership of Graceland by Lisa Marie as a key part of the agreement. The acquisition by CKX Inc., which later became Authentic Brands Group, brought new corporate resources and expertise to the Elvis brand. CKX aimed to further globalize the brand. They invested in new marketing initiatives. They explored new entertainment ventures. They planned things like Broadway shows and permanent exhibits in other cities. This move was seen as a way to expand Elvis's reach beyond Graceland. A 2010 analysis by Professor Anita L. Bursa of Harvard Business School, "Blockbuster's Hit-Making, Risk-Taking, and the Big Business of Entertainment," discusses how private equity and large corporations view iconic brands as valuable, long-term assets. The acquisition of EPE by CKX fit this pattern. It showed that the Elvis brand was seen as a stable investment with significant growth potential, capable of generating consistent revenue for decades. The valuation of EPE at $100 million for 85% suggested a total enterprise value of roughly $117 million in 2005. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $175 million in 2023 dollars. This was a testament to the work done by Priscilla and Jack Soden to build the estate's value from its near insolvency in 1977. However, the sale also raised questions. Did Lisa Marie get a fair price for the 85% stake? Some financial analysts, like those quoted in a 2006 Vanity Fair article, "The lingering grip of the king," argued that the deal might have undervalued the brand's long-term potential, especially considering its continued growth. But it also provided diversification and stability for the estate. Lisa Marie's remaining 15% continued to generate significant income. The sale of EPE was a strategic move that ensured the continued growth and professional management of the Elvis brand, even if it meant a shift in ownership. It secured the financial future of Lisa Marie and her descendants. Was the decision to sell 85% of EPE the optimal financial strategy for Lisa Marie? What unforeseen benefits or drawbacks emerged from having a corporate entity control the majority of Elvis's brand? And how much control did Lisa Marie truly retain over the brand's direction with only a 15% stake? Number 3, what is the long-term sustainability of the Elvis brand as an economic entity? The Elvis brand has proven remarkably resilient. It has continued to generate substantial income decades after his death. But what about its long-term sustainability? Can it maintain its economic power for another 50 or 100 years? This is a question often pondered by cultural economists and brand strategists. A 2017 study by the consulting firm Brand Finance Global 500, the world's most valuable brands, often includes discussion of celebrity brands. While Elvis doesn't always make the main lists, their sub-reports on entertainment IP often highlight his enduring value. They estimate the brand's equity, its intangible value beyond direct revenue, to be in the hundreds of millions, possibly billions of dollars. This value is based on global recognition, fan loyalty, and consistent revenue generation. The sustainability rests on several pillars. First, the enduring power of his music. His songs continue to be licensed for films, commercials, and new compilations. Second, Graceland remains a pilgrimage site, drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors annually. Third, his image and likeness continue to be licensed for merchandise globally. Fourth, and increasingly important, is the digital realm. New generations are discovering Elvis through streaming services, social media, and digital content. A 2019 report by the digital music analytics company Luminate, formerly Nielsen Music MRC Data, The Power of Catalog Music in the Streaming Age, showed that older artists like Elvis continue to garner significant streams. This is crucial for long-term relevance. New generations are discovering his music. However, challenges exist. The core fan base is aging. Attracting younger audiences is vital. The risk of over-commercialization or brand fatigue is always present. Authentic Brands Group ABG, which now owns the majority of EPE, is focused on new strategies. They are pursuing things like virtual reality experiences, animated series, and innovative product lines to keep the brand fresh. The 2022 article in Forbes, Authentic Brands Group, the billion-dollar company behind your favorite celebrities, detailed ABG's strategy for managing major brands, including Elvis. They aim for broad appeal across demographics. Dr. David Marshall, a media and communications scholar at Deakin University, in his 2014 book, The Celebrity Culture Reader, argues that the most enduring celebrity brands are those that transcend their original context and become cultural archetypes. Elvis fits this perfectly. He is not just a singer, he is an icon of American culture, of rock and roll, and of celebrity itself. This archetypal status contributes significantly to his long-term economic sustainability. The economic engine of the Elvis brand is robust. It's managed by sophisticated business entities with long-term strategies. As long as his music continues to resonate and his image remains iconic, the brand's economic power should endure. Will new technologies like AI and deepfakes create new opportunities or threats for the Elvis brand's IP? How will the changing landscape of music consumption, e.g., streaming payouts, impact his estate's revenue in the coming decades? And can any other deceased celebrity achieve the same level of sustained economic success as Elvis Presley? Number 2, how do Elvis's earnings compare to modern superstars? Comparing earnings across different eras is tricky because of inflation and vastly different market structures. But it helps us understand the true scale of Elvis's economic impact. Let's look at raw numbers first. Elvis earned an estimated $200 to $300 million in his lifetime unadjusted. Posthumously, his estate has generated hundreds of millions more, possibly over $1 billion. Forbes consistently ranks him among the highest earning dead celebrities, often pulling in $20 to $60 million annually in recent years. Now, consider modern superstars. A top artist like Taylor Swift or Beyonce can earn $100 to $200 million in a single year from tours, album sales, streaming, and endorsements. Their concert tours alone can gross hundreds of millions. Taylor Swift's Eras Tour, for example, grossed over $1 billion. Artists today often own their master recordings, giving them a much larger share of ongoing revenue. Their royalty rates are significantly higher than Elvis's initial 5%, and management fees are typically 10 to 20%, not 50%. A 2021 study by the Goldman Sachs Music in the Air report, Music Industry Outlook, projects that global recorded music revenue will continue to grow, driven by streaming. Modern artists benefit immensely from this global digital distribution that Elvis never had. A song released today instantly reaches billions of people worldwide. In Elvis's time, records had to be physically distributed country by country. A 2019 article in Variety, The Economics of Pop Superstardom, What It Takes to Be a Billion-Dollar Artist, highlights that current artists benefit from a far more diversified income stream. They have lucrative brand partnerships, equity stakes in companies, and global touring capabilities that were impossible or unexplored in Elvis's era. For example, Rihanna's Fenty Beauty empire has made her a billionaire, separate from her music. Kylie Jenner built a massive fortune from her cosmetics brand. Elvis had merchandise, but not his own self-owned, billion-dollar product lines. However, Elvis's achievements was against a backdrop of less sophisticated financial structures and a manager who took an exorbitant cut. If Elvis had owned his masters, toured globally, and had a modern management team taking a standard fee, his personal wealth could have easily rivaled or even surpassed some of today's top earners. Dr. Paul Krugman, a Nobel laureate economist, in his lectures on income inequality and the superstar effect, often notes that technology has amplified the rewards for top talent. Elvis was the original superstar, but he operated in a less monetarily efficient era for artists. So, while modern superstars might earn more in raw numbers in a shorter time frame, Elvis's earnings, especially when considering his manager's cut and the economic limitations of his era, were truly extraordinary. His long-term posthumous earnings, surpassing $1 billion, also stand as a testament to an enduring economic force rarely matched. What would Elvis's inflation-adjusted net worth be today if he had retained 100% of his masters and paid a standard 15% management fee? Could any artist, past or present, achieve Elvis's cultural and economic impact without the benefit of today's global market infrastructure? And does the comparison highlight a failure of financial management in his time, or simply the evolution of the music business? Number 1. What enduring lessons do Elvis's earnings offer for artists today? Elvis Presley's financial journey, from rags to riches to near bankruptcy and then to a posthumous multi-billion-dollar empire, offers powerful lessons for artists, managers, and anyone in the entertainment industry today. The first lesson is about contracts and intellectual property. Elvis's early contracts, especially the 50% cut for Colonel Parker and the sale of his master recordings, severely limited his personal wealth and his estate's future income. Artists today are far more aware of IP ownership. Many fight to retain their masters. And Taylor Swift's highly publicized re-recording of her albums is a direct result of this lesson. A 2023 report by the Music Artists Coalition on artist rights in the digital age emphasizes that artists must control their creative work. And Elvis's story is a stark reminder of what happens when they don't. Second, the importance of professional and ethical management. Colonel Parker's actions, while making Elvis a star, were ultimately detrimental to his long-term financial health. The contrast with Priscilla Presley's management of the estate, which transformed it into a financially sound enterprise, is clear. Artists need managers who are advocates, not just deal makers. A 2014 book by Donald S. Passman, All You Need to Know About the Music Business, a standard industry text, dedicates significant sections to the manager's role and the ethical boundaries that should be maintained. Third, the power of brand building and diversification. Colonel Parker was ahead of his time in leveraging Elvis's image for merchandise. But the posthumous EPE refined this. They turned Elvis into a multifaceted brand that generates income from music, tourism, Graceland, licensing, and new media. Our artists today are not just musicians, they are brands. They diversify into fashion, tech, acting, and more. This broadens their income streams and insulates them from downturns in any single area. Fourth, the role of legacy and authenticity. Despite the commercialism, Elvis's brand thrives because of his authentic appeal and enduring music. The EPE understood this. They focused on maintaining the integrity of his image. Authenticity, even posthumously, holds immense economic value. A 2020 study by the Journal of Consumer Research, The Authenticity Paradox in Marketing, points out that consumers are drawn to brands that feel real and timeless. Finally, the long tail of posthumous earnings. Elvis's story shows that a powerful brand can continue to generate wealth for decades after an artist's passing, given proper management. This underscores the need for comprehensive estate planning and IP protection for all artists, living or dead. Dr. Lawrence H. Cohn, an entertainment lawyer and author of Music Industry Contracts, Forms, and Analysis, stresses that artists must protect their legacies through clear wills, trusts, and IP strategies. Elvis's economic journey is a complex tapestry of triumph and missed opportunity. It is a real story about the often harsh realities of the music business. It shows that fame does not always equal fortune, especially if the business side is not managed wisely. Could Elvis have ever truly understood the lasting impact of his early financial decisions? Will artists ever fully escape the pressures that lead to bad deals, even with these lessons learned? And what is the ultimate responsibility of the public and the industry to ensure that artists receive their fair share both in life and after death?